Welcome everybody to this live podcast on YouTube with Lewis Rowlands. If you don't know me, I'm Frances Goodall, and I'm a wellness coach and author, and also the author of a book on healing from chronic illness, and also the co-founder of the Women's Wellness Circle, which is an organisation that offers online programmes and retreats for women with chronic health problems. And I'm really pleased to be talking to Lewis today. Lewis is a nutritional balancing practitioner and also the founder of Rewilders, and also has an amazing story of healing to share with us all today. So welcome, Lewis.
Hello, Francis. Thanks for having me on.
Lewis, maybe you could start by sharing a little bit of your story of what led you to the kind of work you do today and who you are today. And maybe you could go back to some of the kind of most difficult moments in your story before we go on to kind of looking at what you did to transform things.
All right, no worries. How long have we got?
about 10 minutes for this, I don't know.
Yeah, all right, no worries. So basically, when I was around 15, 16, I had quite a stressful point in my life. And all of a sudden I started to feel symptoms of disassociation. So basically, for anyone that isn't aware of what disassociation is, it's when you feel disconnected from reality. So reality is basically going, along in front of you, and you're struggling to kind of connect or to feel. Now, as a 15-year-old, that's a little bit strange because you're confused, you're quite young. One thing for me is that, I've always been quite a high achiever. So, I feel that for me to kind of come out and say that, there's something wrong or I've got depression or anything like that was a bit of a taboo subject for me, really. So I kind of kept it to myself because I didn't really know what was going on myself, and just kind of put it down to depression, I suppose. Although now looking back on it, I kind of realised that it was mainly physical for the most part. So I kind of went on, just carried on doing what I was doing. My diet was pretty bad. I basically grew up eating a lot of white bread and wet ready meals and kind of just a stereotypical Western diet that most kids are on. So 16, 17, I was kind of part of the whole party scene. So I was just kind of drive like most people do. I think one of the slip-ups that a lot of people get when they're feeling depressed or they're feeling kind of out of sorts a little bit is they'll try and drive their way through it. So, a lot of people will do a lot of exercise, for example, to feel better, which is perfectly fine to do, but a position where the body's in like a burnout pattern, then actually that can be quite detrimental for a lot of people, because what you're doing in reality is you're just wearing the body out even more. Even though you can do like a heavy exercise session and get a release of endorphins, and you'll basically stress out the adrenal glands a lot, so you'll get a hormone release, or you'll feel better. In the long run, there's actually a slow decline as a result. So that's what I kind of did. So I did like 7-8 miles of running like every other day. I was doing free running for like 8-10 hours a day. I was working 20-30 hours part-time job. I was studying at university and school. I was going out partying most weekends, doing things that I probably shouldn't have been doing. And basically, I just drove myself into the ground. Now, what's interesting is the body is really intelligent. Hello?
All right, we lost you for a second, but I think you're back again.
Yep. So the body is really intelligent, and basically what happens when the body is under a lot of stress like that is it'll switch into something called sympathetic dominance. So sympathetic dominance in layman's term is the fight or flight response. So when the body starts to decline physically, the body will tend to switch on this fight or flight response, and it'll give you this superficial energy. I had energy, which was interesting, so you don't really think I have any physical issues. You kind of think it's all in the head. And You know, I would go and see doctors. They would tell me the problem I had was low self-esteem. I would go and see psychologists. They would tell me I needed to have CBT sessions. And there's nothing wrong with them, you know, but, you know, for me personally, I had a lot of physical issues that I wasn't aware of and the doctors couldn't kind of see.
Yeah.
So I was in this sympathetic dominance pattern and I was just driving myself out of it, but I was feeling terrible. You know, my disassociation was increasing, getting anxiety, a lot of anxiety. I was getting a lot of social anxiety. If anyone knows me, I'm a very social person. So for me to have social anxiety was like very weird. I had candida, I had parasites, I had eczema, I had really dark bags under my eyes, my hair was falling out, I had insomnia, I had EMF sensitivity, I had foot, I had ear infection, chronic ear infection, I had eye problems, floaters, after images, visual snow. I think I actually wrote down my symptoms list. Maybe it was around 30 or 40 different symptoms. However, when I went to the doctors, they was telling me that all I had was low self-esteem. And now, for whatever reason, my self-esteem's pretty good. So I must have done something right. So anyway, I don't want to blab on too much.
Yeah.
So it was around 21, when I was around 21, and I started to hear this thing on the internet called brain fog, and I'm like, oh, that sounds like me. My brain's pretty foggy. And it was an article by a guy named Dr. Wilson, and I read his article, and he was saying, well, brain fog is a lot of it's due to things like adrenal fatigue, candida, parasites, poor diet, all these kind of things. And he had a long list of kind of physical problems and kind of a small list of kind of mental problems. So I was like, well, this is really interesting, because down at a deep level, I always kind of knew that I was a normal person. I was quite sane, you know, I could, you know, I kind of knew that I was all right, but it was as if the interface wasn't working. It was as if I was driving a car, but the tires were flat and the petrol was no good, and the engine was failing and the battery was dying. That's kind of how it felt like in many ways. So I got really excited, and Dr. Wilson does a nutritional balancing program. I'm a nutritional balancing practitioner now. So basically, I started this nutritional balancing program. I got a hair analysis test, which is what I do now. You know, my hair analysis was pretty bad. I was in a pattern called 3 lows. So a 3 lows pattern is basically someone that just drives, but the car is like in a ditch and the wheels are just constantly spinning. In sympathetic dominance times 10. So you have like 1 times 2 times 3 times 5 times 10, which was really, really intense sympathetic dominance. Someone who's like literally always thinking, always driving, always pushing themselves. I had an arsenic level that was actually off the chart. And the lab sent me an email and says, look, we've never seen arsenic levels this high. Can you send us another sample of hair from a different part of the body? And I sent the sample back, and the arsenic level was actually higher. So I was pretty toxic. Now, the issue that I had, and I think a lot of people do, is that we live in a world whereby everything comes to you at a click of a button. If you go into the doctor's office and you've got an infection, you take antibiotics, in 2 or 3 days you feel better. So we live in this quick fix world, and everyone's looking for a magic bullet, basically. So I thought that I was going to do this nutritional balancing program, you know, in a few months, couple of weeks, I'll be fine, I'll be back to my old self. Little did I know that, in fact, my body was pretty sick. After 21 years of literally eating rubbish, driving myself into the ground, going partying like all the time, working really hard, all this kind of stuff, my body was really damaged pretty much. So what had happened is I started a nutritional balancing program, and what it did is it switched off the sympathetic dominance pattern. It took a few weeks because I was very chronic. It took me quite a while to learn to slow down, to to meditate, to breathe, in order to kind of switch off this sympathetic dominance. And when I switched it off, that's when I started to feel how tired my body was. And we're talking extreme fatigue. Like, I cannot explain it. It literally, when I would wake up in the morning, it felt like a steam train had just smashed straight through me. And I was literally just like pinned to the bed. It was just so intense, just the fatigue. And I was just finishing university at this time. And I was, I knew that once I finished university, people are going to expect me to get a full-time job. And there's literally no way on earth could I ever possibly consider the full-time job. I was just so tired. It was ridiculous. So I ended up basically leaving the country and going to Thailand. And I ended up living on a health retreat with a nutritional balancing practitioner. And I spent a year in Thailand basically healing, detoxing, retracing childhood patterns, like fixing personality issues that wasn't suiting my best interests. And I've got to admit, it was 1 or 2 years of pure hell. I was detoxing really hard, because a lot of the people's issues today is actually toxic metals. People don't realize how toxic they are. So I was just detoxing metal after metal after metal. And these are really intense when they're in the bloodstream. I had extreme fatigue. We go through something called healing reactions. So basically a healing reaction, or a Herxheimer's reaction, is basically when the body cannot deal with an infection, or it can't deal with candida at that moment in time. But when you actually give the body what it needs in nutritional balancing, the body will actually retrace this. So an old infection would just, like an old infection in my ear just blew up one time. One time my knee seized up when I was releasing metals from my kneecaps. One time I was releasing copper. I didn't sleep for a week. That was intense. I started having, and then I started having esoteric things going off. So anyone that's into chakras, my chakras started to open up. I could feel chakras spinning around my body. I started to get like intuition. I started to get various guidance. And then this is really intense stuff. I wasn't into any of this stuff. This just started happening. And now I know that basically the body naturally has this ability to be highly developed, like much more developed than a lot of people realize. And basically, if you give the body what it needs, it will start to develop in ways that a lot of people just aren't aware of today. So anyway, I finished in Thailand and I came back to England, and I was still sick. This is like year 3. I mean, I'm still pretty sick. I mean, I had EMF sensitivity. I had to sleep in a Faraday cage for 6 months because I was sensitive to Wi-Fi. Anyone who doesn't know what Faraday cage is, it's basically like a metal container that kind of keeps out frequencies. So, I mean, I was allergic to mobile phones. I mean, that's how intense things was. So, yeah, I got back to England and slowly started to recover even more. I had more energy throughout the day. I started to work 2 days a week. And now we're on year 6 of the program. So on year 6 now, I have energy. I'm quite uplifted for the majority of the time. I have a nice friend circle now. I run 3 businesses. I think people need to realize, when anyone comes from a position where they're very, very sick like that and they've burnt out the body so bad, the body is still going to be fragile for quite a while. So although that I'm all right, if I deviate from the path too much, I will see a decline. But if you don't deviate from the path, then everything's fine. So that's it in a nutshell. I know that's probably a little bit long. I could have gone way, way longer than that. But
there's so much I can draw on from what you said. But one thing that really came to me was that, it sounded like your physical health didn't seem to be too bad in a way, although it was, wasn't very good, until you started actually to heal and started to take the nutritional supplements or whatever and follow the program. And I just wondered, did you lose faith at all then? Did you think, am I doing the right thing? Or did you just know that, okay, my body's going through a healing reaction and this is just what I've got to go through in order to sort of repair my nervous system and get everything back into balance again.
Yeah. I think this is one of the issues that a lot of my friends and family had, is that I appeared to be all right. My chronic fight or flight, I was going out, I was partying, I was going to work, I was going to university. So on the surface, you know, I probably looked all right. I wasn't in hospital. It's not as if I had, and I think this is one of the issues with a lot of people that suffer from chronic illness, is the autoimmune disease and all this kind of stuff, is that they look all right on the outside, but no one really understands what it's like on the inside. So to explain to people how bad you feel, and when the doctors are saying that everything's fine, blood tests are coming back fine, you're stranded. So, I mean, it was even more intense when I started the Nutritional Balancing Programme, and people could physically see I was losing weight. I was like visibly tired. Do you know what I mean? And people are like, well, hold on a minute, he's getting worse. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's getting worse. But there was just something about Dr. Wilson's articles for me that was like, whoa, now this guy, I mean, I used to read a lot of articles and a lot of health stuff, but for some reason I read his stuff and I was like, this guy is is way different to other people. Do you know what I mean? I could just feel it. I could just sense something, some sort of deeper connection that was like, this is different. I mean, his website's huge. He's got like 1,500 articles. So basically what I would do is I would, weirdly, whenever I had an issue where if I would feel more tired, I would kind of type in stuff on his website and I would get an article that kind of explains the reasons why I'm feeling tired, or the reasons why I've got insomnia, or the reasons why I'm feeling these energy centers. Like, he's got an article for everything. So when I would feel down or like feel like, oh, something's not working, it would just pop up like as if it was coming from elsewhere. It was very bizarre. And I would read the article and that would make me feel more at ease. And I had my nutritional balancing practitioner to help me out. But now as a nutritional balancing practitioner, I can tell you now that people drop off quick. You know what I mean? It's difficult because they start the program and they realize how hard it is. And we live in this quick fix world and people don't realize that it's going to take time and effort. And when these healing reactions come up, instead of facing them and asking questions and doing research, they'll turn away. And it's really unfortunate because you have to feel the physical issues. You've got to feel the ailments. You've got to allow them to surface. It's just like anything. If you get the flu, or if you get sick, what do? You go in bed for 2 days, you rest. You feel the sickness and you rest through it. And that's no different to anyone that's suffering from chronic fatigue. You have to go and rest. If you try and fight it by doing too much exercise or socializing too much or going out partying, if you fight it, it's just going to be, you're just going to get yourself into situations. And a lot of the people, when they start the program and they feel this tiredness, a lot of people get into chronic fatigue problems because naturally they're very, very driven people. So when you feel this exhaustion, you have to you have to start changing the way that you think. You have to start changing your personality from someone that's a very hard driver into someone that's actually like appreciates rest and appreciates relaxation. And I remember I had a massively difficult time to think like that, because a lot of people get brought up in modern day society to, if you're resting, that you're lazy, or that you need to achieve, or that you need to get grades and you need to do this. So we get brought up to think that to rest or to sit and watch TV or to go for a walk or to have a massage is actually like being lazy. I got taught that, and many other kids get taught that as well. You know, so there's a process, a personality change process to get through a little bit. So yeah.
So in terms of the personality change, I mean, I get that as well. We talked about that when you interviewed me as well, from my own experience. And was it mainly the achiever personality type that you felt you really had to address in order to be able to sort of calm your system down and help yourself heal, or was there other aspects of your personality that you had to become more mindful of? Or
yeah, so I mean, my specific personality, you know, as I said, I was a high achiever at school. So you know, my grades were really well, and I was quite good at most subjects. So I got put on a pedestal, especially as the first child in the family, you know. So you kind of get your self-worth a lot from your achievements. Do you know what I mean? So if you achieved well, you would get, people would say, well done, or people would, you know, congratulate you or anything like that. And you gain a lot of self-worth from that. Do you know what I mean? So when you kind of start getting sick and stuff and you can't achieve as well, you tend to drive more to get that sense of achievement. But in reality, what you're doing is you're just burning yourself out even more. So it's kind of a catch-22.
And
So,
also, I found that I experienced such low self-worth because I was unable to do anything that gave me a feeling of feeling okay about myself before that sort of thing. So obviously staying in a place of low self-worth doesn't really help you heal either. So you have to, maybe you could talk a bit more about how you kind of rebuilt your personality or kind of healed yourself on those kind of levels, the sort of childhood patterns, your personality, what sort of inner work you did there, and how that links in with the nutritional balancing program work.
Yeah, so when I first started feeling really tired from when I started the program, as I said, I had to shift my personality. So I was fighting the program for a while, and I was quite shocked actually at how tired that I was. It was quite shocking. I was like, this is not normal whatsoever. I think it's difficult to think back now, but I think what I had to do was I had to teach myself that rest was actually a good thing. I think that was the main personality pattern that was the most helpful for me, was to realize that the world is made up of balance, like yin and yang. And if you do exercise and activity, that needs to be balanced with rest and relaxation. You know what I mean? They both kind of help each other out. And it was just the process of every day, just trying to relax, trying to say to yourself, Lewis, it's fine to relax. It's healthy to relax. It's healthy to do nothing. And another thing that helped me out was I was so in awe of the Nutritional Balancing Programme when I was reading the articles, that I knew that if I was to just try and surrender to the program, in a few years' time, I will be much, much better off than what I was maybe when I was 15, before I even got sick. Do you know what I mean? So there was always that kind of, I suppose, in a way, my ego was fighting it a little bit, because my ego was saying, oh, if you just rest now, Lewis, in a few years' time, you can do all the other things that you want to do. You can, you know, and I have had to deal with that now, is when now that I've got energy, I have been in situations whereby I've got myself into that personality pattern that I had when I was 15, 16, 17. Do you know what I mean? Where I would go out a lot, and I would drive a lot, and I would do this and I would do that. And it's difficult sometimes to separate the healthy personality traits to the unhealthy personality traits. So for me, being someone who likes to build businesses of value for people, now to me, that's a healthy personality trait. That's a personality trait that wants to build things that help other people. Whereby I tend to have this addictive personality trait of, I like to go out and party. Well, I like to go out and enjoy myself and stay up late and dance and this and this, which obviously dancing and having a good time is all right. But when you start getting past 12 o'clock and you start getting yourself into various other situations, that's when it becomes unhealthy. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. So it's kind of figuring out what's healthy, what's unhealthy, and just changing your mindset a little bit. Maybe swapping out. So instead of going out every weekend, what I would do is I would say to myself, well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to sleep early, and I'm going to go for a really good walk in the morning with some friends in the Peak District, or in the landscape. So I was kind of, my personality likes creativity and color and, you know, engagement and stuff. And I was trying to get that, I think, from going out a lot with the color and the engagement and the fun. But what I've done now is I've kind of kind of retrained myself to be excited about going to bed a little bit early and getting up early, to go out and find that excitement and colour and fulfillment from nature and stuff like that.
So which brings us on nicely maybe to the next topic of rewilding. But before we go on to that, can we just go back a little bit? You talked about rest and relaxation, and that was a big part of sort of addressing those personality traits and learning to sort of calm down. And what sort of things, maybe it links back to nature anyway, but what sort of things would you say, particularly when you're very ill, that really helped you to rest and to relax? Because actually a lot of people who are ill seem to be kind of in a sort of tired but wired state a lot. So they're kind of exhausted, but their system's also quite sort of agitated. Maybe they've got chronic pain as well. You know, a lot of people have chronic pain as well. So I'm wondering what sort of things were the things that really helped you to relax and to rest and to restore in that way?
All right, so in nutritional balancing, we're quite up on the idea of yin and yang. So basically, you know, yin is outwards moving, it's creative, it's chaotic, it's spacey, floaty, upwards moving, etc., etc. Yang is the opposite. It's hot, it's dense, it's grounded, it's downwards moving energy. You know, you can see the polarities. So a lot of people today, well, the vast majority of the population today are too yin. So they're floaty, spacey, and the reasons are because they drive too much. They're in kind of victim mentality. They feel like they're victimized by the world. They are on poor diets, which can space you out. They do specific meditations that move energy upwards. You know, which is a lot of these meditations, people will say they're really good, but unfortunately, because most people's bodies today are too yin, it's actually spacing them out even more. They think they're becoming more spiritual, but in reality, they're just becoming more spaced out.
Yeah, I know that one well, as you know. Yeah. So what's a meditation that involves going? Can you explain briefly what a meditation that involves kind of?
Reasons. I'll explain how to kind of get more yang. So if we can. So toxic metals, for example, if you in nature, they're quite yang, they're quite dense and grounded, but as they get into the body, they cause chaos in the body and cause a person to become more yin. So you get the idea between yin and yang. So the idea of nutritional balancing is to make the body more yang, to bring it down, basically. So we do various different things in nutritional balancing. So the biggest thing to do is diet. So in nutritional balancing, we have a diet mainly of cooked vegetables. So when you cook the vegetables, they become more hot, they become more dense, they become more yang. So it brings the body downwards. Root vegetables, which are in the ground, which are more yang, they're grounded. So we have a lot of root vegetables. It's one of the reasons why we don't actually recommend too much fruit, because fruit is really yin. It's high growing, it's full of sugar. And a lot of people love eating too much fruit today. But you'll find that people that eat a lot of fruit are quite spaced out. They're quite ungrounded. They tend to overthink too much. They tend to have skin problems. They tend to feel cold, and they will feel, you know, I hate to say it, but they can tend to feel a bit more spiritually oriented. But in reality, what's happening is the body is just going too far upwards, and the energy is going too far upwards, and the trick is to bring it down. So we don't actually recommend fruit in nutritional balancing. I'm not saying it's a bad food, but because the bodies are too yin today, it's not a good idea. So we also recommend, and I know a lot of people are going to be offended by this, but we also recommend meat. Meat is a very grounding food. It's very, very difficult to get a specific type of zinc today. Zinc is a very, very important mineral, and not many people are getting it. And it's extremely difficult to get a specific type of zinc that really grounds a person and kind of balances out the mind and the emotions without incorporating a bit of meat into the diet. And I can tell you from my experience, that when I introduced meat, I felt so much better and more grounded. And I can say to other people that I've got them to eat some meat, they'll ring me up after a couple of weeks and say that they feel much better.
Yeah.
So I wish that wasn't the case for obvious reasons, but unfortunately that just seems to be the truth of what we're seeing in nutrition balancing. So that's basically the diet. It's more complicated than that. We do other things like detox protocols. So one of the main ones is infrared sauna. Infrared is a red. Infrared is quite low on the frequencies. So it's more yang. It's full of reds, oranges, and yellows, which are more grounding in nature. So the infrared brings a person down, down, down. It allows them to detoxify the toxic metals. It increases circulation. It kind of does a lot of the things that exercise does, but in a more grounded way where you're not stressing out the adrenal glands too much. We also do things like coffee enemas, a bit of a taboo subject, but it's one of them things, don't knock it till you tried it. The black beans of the coffee are very good at bringing the energy down. Excellent at detoxifying the liver. The livers are all pretty much ruined in most of the Western world today. It takes years to detoxify, an excellent way of detoxifying. Foot reflexology is another excellent way of bringing the energy downwards and massaging the organs. We also do a specific type of meditation. We call it the pushing down exercise, which is probably the most important aspect of the program and probably the quickest way for anyone to unwind that upwards movement pattern, that yin pattern. So basically the pushing down exercise is where you concentrate on the feet. So it's a little bit like in yoga, in other meditations where you concentrate on the breath, but by concentrating on the feet, it puts the mind and the energy more downwards. So you're not going up too much. By concentrating on the feet over and over again, what you'll do is the mind is like a filing cabinet. So when you separate the mind, so one part of the mind's focusing on the feet, the other part of the mind will start to process stuff. So in the beginning, it'll be like, oh, I forgot to pick up the groceries. I forgot to write a letter. I forgot to post this. Just allow the process to keep going. After 20 minutes, you'll start to get other things coming up. Maybe it's a personality trait. Maybe it's something about someone that you hang around with that doesn't seem too good for you. Then you get deeper and deeper and you start processing old childhood patterns. Maybe it's something to do with your parents that you need to forgive. And the trick is just to allow it to come up, and after a while you'll kind of process these traumas. While you're doing the pushing down exercise, what we also like people to do is we like to bring anyone that's into meditation or yoga or anything like that will know chi energy, prana, orgone energy, source energy, ether. They're all the same thing. All the major religions talk about it, and it is actually a real element that moves through the whole of the universe. And what you can do is you can mentally imagine the chi running down the body, and it really, really grounds you. Some people can feel the chi. I was quite lucky in the fact that I could feel it as soon as I started meditating. So anyone, I could sit and meditate for 5 minutes, and if you would run your finger down my spine, all my vertebrae would be shaking like this as the chi energy is running down my body. The same in my jaw. If you was to put your finger on my jaw, you'd feel my jaw moving. I remember in the beginning when I first started this meditation, I could feel this chi energy was coming out of my third eye and kind of pushing myself upwards. It was really weird. It was like someone was pulling me upwards with like a rope. I was really spaced out and too much up there. And it took me a few months, but after a while I could feel the energy kind of coming downwards, which is a more healthy way of doing things. So that's basically it. We have supplement recommendations. The supplements are all quite ground. The supplements in nature are quite yin, but when we kind of, when it's kind of worked together with the program, it kind of makes the body more yang and stuff. So it's quite an in-depth program, really. We do hair analysis to kind of see exactly where a person's at, see their mineral levels, see how ungrounded they are, see personality traits, see if they're feeling stuck, see if they're thinking too much. Like some people get a little bit worried because I'll get the hair analysis and I'll know more about them than they know about themselves just by looking at this test. So yeah, that's basically it, really. So I did that for a while, and when you do ground yourself, that's when really, you know, things start to feel really nice because you do feel part of the earth, and your disassociation tends to go and stuff. So anyone that's you know, too yin, they just don't feel connected, and it's just not a nice way to live your life, really.
I love the way that it's so grounded as well, because yeah, like, you know, when you think about sort of things like Kundalini meditations or Kundalini yoga, and you think, you know, put the energy up, sort of connect to source up here. I like the way that it's so grounded and embodied, and sort of, it sounds very wise. So I like that. And
I actually get a lot of calls from people that have had Kundalini experiences, and unfortunately, it's not like Kundalini is a bad thing to do. But a few hundred years ago, when the earth and the people was not as yin, there was much more yang, then you can do, the body's already grounded. So then you can try and connect to that source up there. But unfortunately today, when the bodies are too yin and you're doing something as extreme as the Kundalini meditation, you know, I've had 10, 20 phone calls from people where their body is just completely like burnt out because they've gone through this experience, and it's just basically wired the whole body, and it takes them years to get back into that grounded position. I can tell you now that when you become more grounded, you will actually become more spiritually oriented, because the mind and the brain will kind of detoxify and fix itself to a point whereby the energy is just coming straight down into the body, and it's a much more better way of I think moving through life, is by having your feet on the ground, but having your head open at the same time. So the energy is just flowing through you.
Lovely. Yeah. So in terms of nutritional balancing, how if people want to work with you, how would they find you? I will go on to rewilding in a minute, but yeah.
All right, yeah. So if anyone wants to get in touch, I have a YouTube channel which is got like, I think 160 videos on there, various things. So my YouTube channel is Deep Healing Space. I have a website which is www.deephealingspace.com. If anyone wants to email me, my name is Lewis, spelled Lewis, at deephealingspace.com. Send me an email, watch some videos and stuff. If you resonate, then, you know, get in touch. Yeah, that's basically it.
Great. And I can personally say that I got better from chronic fatigue without following the nutritional balancing, and, you know, and the Kundalini experience as well. But it feels like nutritional balancing will help take me to a more optimal sort of place of health. And also the supplements for me have really felt like they've relaxed my nervous system at a level that I didn't even realize my nervous system was still holding some stress in a way. You know, so it's really been powerful. So I'm really grateful to you, Lewis, as well. So
Good.
And talking of which, as well, part of my issues that I brought to you was kind of premenstrual issues, and a lot of my clients have sort of issues with their cycles that go alongside the chronic fatigue or fibromyalgia or whatever they're experiencing. So I just wondered if you could briefly touch on women's health before we move on to rewilding.
All right. So you'll hear me talk about this a lot if anyone knows me, even my friends, or on my YouTube channel, but it is actually a pandemic today, and people need to understand it a lot, because it's a big problem. Sorry. And that is something called copper imbalance. Now, copper is a mineral in the body, and the body uses it. It's quite an important one. But like anything in life, where there's a yin, there's a yang. And the opposite of copper is zinc. Now, copper is more of a female mineral. Zinc is more of a male mineral. So women tend to have more copper in their systems than men. Now, as I talked about earlier, our zinc levels today are very, very bad. And basically what happens is when the zinc levels begin to lower, the copper levels will begin to increase. Now, naturally, when a woman is going through menstruation, naturally the body will increase its copper at that time. Anyone that's not got good zinc levels will tend to have PMS symptoms. So copper toxicity will tend to increase thinking. You tend to overthink, you tend to get paranoid, you'll get anxious. You know, you hear about, you know, women who are having PMS symptoms eating chocolate, for example. Well, people don't realize that copper is in its highest form in chocolate. Chocolate is probably the highest thing you can eat that's got copper in it. The body kind of wants more of it, but it's actually really detrimental. Now, I've got to be honest here. I've got to be really truthful, because this is the truth, and I can't lie, and I wish it wasn't the truth. But unfortunately, things like vegetarian diets and vegan diets increase the copper in a person's body. That's just what we found in nutritional balancing. So we tend to find that a lot of people that are on a vegan diet or a vegetarian diet will tend to have more increased PMS symptoms and a more heavy menstruation as well. And this is all due to the fact that the copper is becoming too intense. Now, it's not just around that time of month as well. If you've got high copper, it will tend to just keep going, especially if you're having, you know, if you're lacking this specific zinc. So you'll get overthinking, paranoid, dry skin, anxiety, social anxiety, and it can even go, I mean, anyone that suffers from really high copper will start to get into things like schizophrenia, bipolar, Tourette's, tics, hallucinations. All that kind of stuff is actually extreme copper toxicity, believe it or not. We've had a few cases of schizophrenia, and we tested the people's hair. Their copper levels were through the roof. These people have been put in mental asylums for years. We got them in a nutrition balancing program. Within 6 months, they've been released and they're back in college and school. Okay. Quite amazing. So what I find is that if I can get a woman to start a nutrition balancing program and to incorporate a bit of meat, and especially a bit of red meat, into the diet, we'll generally find, and we'll get the supplements, we'll generally find that the PMS symptoms will decrease a lot. The heavy periods will also decrease. And what's interesting is that what I found as a nutrition balancing practitioner is that the women will start to align up with the moon cycles as well, which is a very, very nice thing to see, because you know that they're starting to integrate themselves with the natural moon cycles. So to me, when a woman starts to align themselves up with the moon cycles, to me, it makes me realize that the nutrition balancing program is working quite well. So yeah, I hope that's answered your question.
It absolutely has. Yeah. So let's before we come to see if there's any questions for anyone, let's let you talk a little bit about what brought you to the concept of Rewilders, your most recent business, I'm not sure. What brought you to that concept, and talk to us more about that, and how the concept of kind of being more in nature is healing for us physically as well.
All right. So I think when I was sick, and I think when a lot of people are sick, they look around everyone else and they're like, well, I just want to be like that person, you know, and you strive to be the person that goes out a lot drinking or socializing, or you just want to be normal, basically. And you think that if you can get yourself to that level of being normal, then everything's going to be fine. What I realized is that as I become more healthier, and as I started to realize and take responsibility for myself and started to come out of victim mentality, I started to look around me and started to realize that in reality, everyone else is pretty sick as well. And I wasn't content with what I was doing. I was just kind of sitting behind my computer and quite confused, because I was healthier now and I had energy and my emotions were a lot better, but I wasn't happy. I wasn't content. There was something missing. There was a missing link. And what was coming up in my meditation was just getting out in nature, reconnecting with nature. And I started getting really interested in, you know, ancestral life ways. So, you know, basically it's been proven, in my opinion, for hundreds of thousands of years that humans have lived quite happy, healthy. We've lived in communities. We've had a very close, intimate relationship with the natural environment, a spiritual connection with the natural environment that people don't really understand too deeply. And, you know, modern civilization, what we've got now is just a tiny, tiny little blimp, and we we idolize technology, we idolize computers, we idolize TVs, we get told what to do by teachers, we get told that success is built into money and achieving things. And when in reality, when you look at these tribal people, they found meaning from engagement in nature. They found meaning from providing for the family. They found meaning from, looking after the community. And as I started to take myself outside and started to engage with the environment and to trying to not see the environment as something separate, but as if I was part of the environment, just like all the tribal people do, it started to make me realize that there's other nutrients to life that we need to be aware of. It's not just diet, it's not just water, it's not just meditation. It's also like reconnecting with your true home, reconnecting with the wild food, reconnecting with the wild animals, reconnecting with a spiritual aspect of nature, getting good quality fresh air, just being grounded, being independent. One thing about these indigenous people is they were independent people. I'm speaking from a man's perspective now. I think it'd be nice in the future to see more men's groups in this kind of area because men are really struggling. Men by nature, I feel, want to provide and they want to be independent. Nowadays, men can't even fix their cars because they're so complex. Men can't fix their laptops, their mobile phones. They're sat behind computers. For me, there's no sense. I feel stuck. I rely on people to send food from thousands of miles away. I rely on this boss to pay me money. My sense of self and my sense of masculinity seems to be like fading away a little bit. And I found that when I got into nature and I started finding my own food and, maybe chopping my own wood for my own fires and keeping myself warm and being out with other guys and talking to other guys about issues and you realize that all the guys are thinking the same way. They've all got the same issues, that they're lacking this sense of purpose, this sense of meaning. And I find that if I just go out into nature and just spend 3 or 4 hours walking around and engaging with nature and having fun and seeing the animals and picking some food that I can eat at night, there's a sense of meaning there that you can't really articulate very well. And it's interesting. It's as if nature has already figured it all out for us and we just kind of need to get back in touch with that a little bit. So this whole rewilding project is basically, it's an organic entity where I don't really know where it's going. I don't want to be the person that's got all the answers. I haven't got the answers. No one's got the answers, but hopefully I'm giving people that to try and maybe wake people up to the fact that sitting behind a desk or watching TV or sitting on Facebook, which don't get me wrong, I do sit on Facebook. There's a different world out there. Maybe there's a different way of connecting. I'm not saying let's go backwards and let's go and live in the forests again, but I'm saying that maybe there's a bridge. Let's take the best of our ancestral way of living because we know that they was healthier. We know that they was more happier. There was less depression. There wasn't any chronic illness, no autoimmune diseases, no cancers. They had a social structure that tends to work better. They saw everyone as equal. So they've got something going off there. I mean, and then you look at the modern day society, well, there's good things there. I mean, trauma medicine, we don't want to get rid of that. But maybe we want to get rid of chronic illnesses. Maybe we want to get rid of processed foods that aren't serving us very well. Maybe we want to swap Facebook for like actual FaceTime in nature. Maybe instead of sitting around the flickering TV, listening to stories, maybe we sit around a flickering fire telling stories. Do you know what I mean? So I just feel like there's a symbiosis that we need to find.
Yeah.
Project hopefully is a way of connecting with other people. I mean, just by setting up the Facebook group, I've met so many cool people that are teaching me how to light fire. I mean, one guy that I met recently taught me how to make a fire by hand. Now, we've been doing this for hundreds of thousands of years, and when I did that, it hit something inside of me that it was as if it was part of my DNA, that it just felt meaningful, you know. And I think just trying to regain a bit of that we've lost. That's
Definitely.
the idea.
And what about for some listeners might be sort of housebound or bedbound even with illness? How can they have a sense of connecting with nature if they're currently maybe unable to leave the house? Or any suggestions for that, just in case that?
Well, I think
anyone...
getting into that mindset is a good idea. So rewild your bedroom,
Yeah.
rewild your living room. You know, instead of watching Geordie Shore, watch a documentary on tribal living. Watch a documentary on how to forage mushrooms. You know, the TV is an excellent thing. I come home at night and instead of putting the news on, I'll put on a rewilding documentary. I watched a really interesting film called The Gods Must Be Mad, about you know, it's a comedy about some tribe, and someone throws a coke bottle out of an aeroplane window, and they're just fascinated by this coke bottle, but it causes chaos within the community, and it makes you realize that, you know, the natural world is perfectly set up. So, you know, bring more plants into the living room, get an ozone machine, bring some fresh air into the living room, you know, read books on wildlife, you know, join Facebook groups, join the Rewilding Facebook group.
Yeah.
You know, if you can, I don't know how sick you are, if you can get yourself in the garden, maybe even if you're in a wheelchair, go and light a fire. You know, there's ways and means of just trying to reconnect with nature, I think, a little bit.
There are, yeah, one of our meditations through Women's Wellness Circle is about connecting to the earth and really putting kind of roots down into the earth, which maybe is a bit like the sort of pushing down in a way, and helping people to kind of feel that connection to the earth. Maybe people can look outside their windows, see a tree and connect with the tree. There's lots of ways, isn't there? So great, thank you. So let's see if there's any questions that have come through. So if you want to write a question, feel free to write it in the comments box. We've got one. Lindsay says, gosh, this is so me and how I've developed and reacted totally wrongly to my tinnitus. The driving through the pain and having superficial energy. Thank you.
Usually what we find with tinnitus is that tinnitus actually is a toxic metal in the ears, mainly manganese. So that's interesting to know. We generally find that if you can get into a near-infrared sauna and put it on your ears and extract the manganese out of there, it really, really helps. Also, tinnitus is related to the back of the brain where the visual cortex is. So a lot of people will get copper stuck in there and it will short wire the system and cause tinnitus. Another rare one is actually the C1 and the C2 spinal column can be slightly misaligned a little bit. So maybe go and see a chiropractor, get that fixed into place, and sometimes the tinnitus goes. But generally, it's a metal issue. Some
great tips there. I mean, I had the understanding it was more to do with the fight-flight issue that was manifesting in the ears, but maybe that's present as well. But yeah, interesting.
Yeah. I mean, anyone that's suffering from copper toxicity usually is in fight-flight, so it just kind of feeds the problem, really. The tinnitus. Yeah, great
tips for you there, Lindsay. See if anyone else is asking anything. So feel free to ask anything if you're there. So we've got a few minutes left. So anything you kind of want to leave our audience with today, Lewis, and anyone who's watching the replay as well, in terms of tips for wellness, final tips or anything? Final bits of wisdom?
Not really. I would say that try to be more aware and try not to, just to realise that maybe not everyone's got your best interests at heart. The media definitely not got your best interests at heart. The news channels have not got your best interests at heart. The supermarkets, definitely not. The financial systems, no. Maybe a boss, you know. So it's initially just separating yourself from that a little bit and questioning, is this actually healthy? Is this wholesome? Is this lifting me up or is it bringing me down? You know, stop drinking Coca-Cola. Stop watching, you know, you need to treat the mind and the body as like a beautiful garden, you know, like the Garden of Eden. And at the end of the day, how do you keep the Garden of Eden happy and healthy? Well, you make sure it's watered, you make sure it's in good sunlight, you make sure the soil's full of minerals. You basically create an environment. If you don't care for the environment, if you don't care for the garden, it will start to die. And if you're surrounded by other plants that are also dying, it's difficult sometimes to separate yourself from that, you know. So sometimes you've got to take yourself out of this unhealthy garden that you're surrounded by, and just have faith that there's another garden out there that's much more healthier, you know. And once you get into that mindset, you'll start to feel better as you start to eat better, as you start to drink better, as you start to detox. But as your vibration increases, you'll also tend to find that you'll start to be around people that are vibrating at a similar level to you as well, you know. And you realize that the tribe that you was in before probably didn't have your best interests at heart, and there's a tribe out there that think like you, dance like you, sing like you, and you'll connect with on a totally different level. You need to realize that the earth is made up of dimensions, so you need to pick, you know, your altitude is your attitude, you know. So your attitude towards life generates your altitude, and if you're at a certain altitude, you'll be surrounded by people that are on that altitude as well.
Makes living very precious and fun and inspiring and wonderful. So thank you, Lewis, for joining us today. And maybe you could just finish by just saying again the different ways people can connect with you through your nutritional balancing work, and also with Rewilders as well.
Oh yeah, so yeah, got a YouTube channel, Deep Healing Space. Check it out. I usually put a video on there like once a week. If you want to work with me, if you've got any type of chronic illness or anything like that, email me, lewis@deephealingspace.com, LEWIS. My website is deephealingspace.com. If you're interested in the rewilding thing, we have a Facebook group called Rewilders Sheffield. I have 3 online courses which are all free for people to go online and to try and, which starts to reconnect with nature. That's www.rewilders.co, not .co.uk, just .co. On there's a 30-day rewilding challenge. There is a course on phenology, which is looking at the different changes of nature and plants throughout the year. There is also a course on general rewilding, which is free. So check it out. And yeah, if you want to get in touch, send me an email.
Great. And I've also actually posted a link beneath this video to the YouTube video that you did with me on the Rewilders YouTube channel, which I know is very new. And also, if you want to subscribe below to my channel to stay updated with what I'm doing, you can do that too. So thank you everyone for joining us, and thank you, Lewis, so much. It's been great to have your wisdom here and your
Thanks a lot.
experience.
Bye.
Bye.